And I think, there's an important connection between ideas that are embedded in language. And sometimes you lose those connections when you translate. And you mentioned this in the introduction. I was hoping you could speak to that and maybe use the example of words for knowledge and perception in Pali and how they're
Yeah,
connected.
yeah. Well, I think what I pointed out there is that there are connections between many technical terms that occur in Pali that would be apparent for one who is looking at the text in the Pali language, but those connections become lost when one renders the text into English because we don't have a one-to-one correspondence between English words and Pali words. And one of the examples that I gave in the introduction are words for knowledge, which is jnana, and then the word that's translated as usually translated as wisdom is panya.
Mm.
And panya, we could say in Pali, is based on the same root, verbal root, that the word for knowledge is based on, the root nya. Okay, but then we come to the word for that's usually translated perception, sanya. Sanya is also built on the root nya. And then the word for that I translate as understanding, parinya, is also based on the root nya. And abhinya, which I translate direct knowledge, is also built on the word, on the root nya. So we have a whole family of words that come out from the root nya, but when we render them into English, we use words, English words that don't have any apparent etymological connection with one another.
And this etymological connection gives you a real feel and sort of a different understanding in a way, I imagine.
Yeah, it enables one to see connections between words and families of words that one can't perceive in the English translation.
And so even someone who doesn't know the grammar but are interested in the actual words will be able to appreciate that a little bit through the work you've done in this book, actually.
Yeah, I point out these connections in the book.
Yeah. And it's nice because there's 3 levels, right? There's the original Pali, then there's different types of translation, then there's like word for word translation, and then there's the
Yeah,
next level of how
yeah,
you would make this,
yeah,
publishable in the books like you
yeah,
do. So
yeah.
that's like a real window into the process of translation as well, actually.
Yeah, I think it serves that purpose of showing how one would construct a translation.
Fantastic. So one of the reasons someone might be interested in, even if they don't know the language, but stepping behind the English language into this other world of, the translation and Pali is
Yeah.
that they feel like they're getting closer to the Buddha's teachings in a way. And so could you talk a little bit about the relationship between the Pali language,
Mm.
the Pali sutras, and the actual language the Buddha or languages the Buddha might have used?
Yeah, this is a matter in which there's no clear determination among scholars. There's still a great deal of uncertainty. What was the language that the Buddha actually spoke? But Pali, at least the prevalent opinion among scholars now, is that Pali is a composite language. Maybe we call it an artificial language or a lingua franca, created by combining features of a number of dialects that were used in northern India in order to make the teachings intelligible to monastic communities spread out across northern India. The Buddha lived and taught in the northeast part of India, in the states region that now corresponds partly to the state of Bihar
Mm,
and to parts of the state of Uttar Pradesh.
mm.
These were the states of Magadha and primarily Kosala. And so we might conjecture that the Buddha in his teaching rounds would have used several languages, probably the language that was prevalent in each of these states. But these, we call them different languages, but they're actually in a way dialectical variations on a basic underlying root language. And so one, a little bit like the connection between maybe Spanish, Portuguese, Italian. And so one who knows, I say in the introduction, even if we can't determine the exact language that the Buddha spoke, if we somehow, out of a miracle, a tape recording of the Buddha's discourse were to manifest, somebody who knows Pali would be, and the recording were to be transcribed, somebody who knows Pali would be able to understand maybe 95 to 98% of it.
Would that be the same for someone who knows Sanskrit as well?
I would say pretty much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, except that in Pali, what happens is that Sanskrit, because it's primarily originally a literary language, it has certain phonological features and grammatical features which are lost in Pali because Pali is based on spoken languages. So Sanskrit has, in terms of the numbers, it has the singular and the plural, like any language, but then it also has dual forms.
Yes.
So where you have two people doing something, you have separate pronouns, verb forms, and so on for two. Whereas in Pali, the dual forms are completely eliminated. They're just absorbed into the plural.
And in the introduction, maybe I'm wrong, but did you say Pali was never a spoken language? It was more
That is the general consensus amongst the scholars of the Middle Indo-Aryan languages.
Yeah.
I would say that Pali in the ancient times was not a spoken language, but it's based on spoken languages. It's a kind of composite from several dialects used in northern India. But Pali did become a spoken language in the sense that it was used amongst erudite monks from different Theravadan countries to communicate with each other. So when monks from Sri Lanka would meet monks from Myanmar, they would, even though they couldn't communicate in either Sinhalese or the Myanmar language, but they would communicate in Pali.